You like to think you're strong, don't you? Maybe you go to the gym a few times a week. Maybe you run, lift weights, or even do some kind of martial art. You tell yourself, if I lived back in ancient times, I would have been a warrior. I would have joined the Roman legion and fought for glory. It's a nice thought, isn't it? But let me ask you something. When was the last time you woke up before sunrise, not for a vacation or a flight, but to run 10 miles carrying a heavy backpack? When was the last time you went days without proper food, without clean water, and still had to march in the heat? You probably imagine the Roman legion as some noble band of heroes, marching in perfect formation, cheered on by the people. You think about their shining armor, their disciplined ranks, their glorious victories. But here's the quiet truth. There was nothing glorious about the first day. And if you, a modern human, stepped into their world, you wouldn't even make it past the morning drill. Let's start simple. You'd arrive at the training camp thinking you're prepared. You might even be proud of your modern fitness level. Maybe you can do 100 push-ups. Maybe you have nice running shoes and think endurance is your strength. But you'd be wearing a rough wool tunic, a belt digging into your skin, and sandals that were never designed for comfort, and there would be no soft welcome, no introduction speech. The centurion, your new trainer, would just bark orders in a voice that could make stones tremble. He wouldn't care if you didn't understand the words. His eyes alone would tell you what to do. And what would you do? You would run, not a gentle jog. Not a warm-up. No, you would run miles across uneven dirt roads while carrying a training pack weighing nearly 30 kilograms. That's about the weight of a small child, strapped to your back. You wouldn't just carry it. You'd carry it while holding a wooden training sword, shaped like the real thing but heavier on purpose, and you wouldn't run alone. Around you, dozens of recruits would be doing the same thing. Some would already be collapsing. Others would be gasping for air. And remember, this is just the start. No one is even fighting yet. You'd feel your shoulders burn after just a few minutes. Your legs would ache in ways you didn't know they could ache. You'd feel sweat running down your back, soaking your tunic, making it cling to you like a wet rag, and the sun. It would be climbing higher, already turning the ground into a warm oven. And just when you thought, surely this is enough for one day, the centurion would tell you to stop. Not to rest, no, to start drills. You'd stand there, heart pounding, lungs screaming for air, while he handed you a wooden shield, and then he'd make you practice marching in formation. Step after step, over and over again, you'd think, why am I doing this? I just want to sit down. But sitting down isn't an option, not unless you want to feel the lash of discipline. In the Roman legion, quitting wasn't a choice. After that, you'd begin weapon training. And here's the thing, they didn't hand you a light, balanced sword. They handed you a heavy wooden one on purpose. Why? Because if you could swing that for hours, the real sword would feel like a feather later. Clever, yes. Kind, no. Imagine gripping a wooden sword that feels heavier with each swing. Your fingers would start to blister, your arms would tremble, and the centurion would shout again. You'd swing and swing and swing until your shoulders burned like fire, and through all of this, no one would give you water breaks like a modern coach. There would be no kind encouragement. No, you can do it. No one cared about your feelings. You were just another recruit. Either you made it or you didn't, and you wouldn't. Most modern people wouldn't last a single morning. By midday, your body would already be screaming for mercy. Your feet would have raw spots from the rough sandals. Your skin would itch under the coarse wool, and your mind would whisper, I can't. But you'd have no choice, because the Romans believed the real enemy was weakness. So they trained you until your weakness was gone, or until you were, and even if you somehow dragged yourself through the drills, what would come next? You'd have to build the camp, Yes, after running, marching, and weapons training, you'd have to dig trenches, cut wood, set up tents. And you'd have to do it fast because the centurion was watching. Truth is, the Roman legion wasn't made for ordinary people. It was made to crush ordinary people and rebuild them into something harder. It was made for survival, not comfort. So when you see a movie showing brave legionnaires standing proudly in formation, remember this: behind that glory were endless days of pain, exhaustion, and fear. They didn't become strong overnight. They were broken down and rebuilt. And many didn't survive the breaking. Would you? Could you wake up before dawn every day, knowing that all you'd face was more pain? Could you march 20 miles carrying your life on your back, only to train harder after? Could you sleep on the cold ground with nothing but your cloak and a dull hope of living through another day? Be honest, you wouldn't last, not a week. Not even a full day. And that's the funny thing. We look back at history and think it was heroic. We imagine we could do it too. But the Legion was built on a truth that most of us don't want to. This glory was earned by those who suffered more than we ever will. So if you're sitting comfortably in your bed right now, listening to this, drifting slowly into sleep, be thankful. Thankful that you were born in a time where hard work means sitting at a desk or lifting weights in an air-conditioned gym. Because if you ever stepped into their world, into their sandals, and felt the first whip of the Roman sun on your neck as you marched into nowhere, you realize very quickly you wouldn't last a day. Cloak. There's no soft bed, no blanket, no pillow, just the earth beneath you. You're not even in a room, just a simple tent, or sometimes nothing at all. The air is cold, damp, and heavy. You hear the faint sounds of movement all around, other soldiers stirring, boots shuffling, a few quiet coughs. Then it comes, the sharp sound of the centurion's horn. It cuts through the silence like a blade. There's no snooze button. Number. Second warning. You're expected to get up instantly. If you hesitate even for a breath, someone will notice. And trust me, you do not want to be the one who is late. Your body aches from the previous day. Every muscle feels stiff. Your shoulders burn from carrying the heavy training sword. Your legs are sore from marching on uneven roads. And yet, you have no time to stretch or complain. You have to move. You pull yourself up, rubbing the sleep from your eyes. It's still dark. The sky is black, the stars faint. You can see your own breath in the cold air. And you know that before the sun climbs over the horizon, you will already be exhausted. You grab your equipment, and it is not light. First, the armor. It is made of iron and leather. It weighs around 30 kilograms. That's about the weight of a small piece of furniture you would struggle to lift today. You also carry a shield, large and wooden, reinforced with metal. And of course, your weapons, a short sword and a spear. All of this must be strapped to your body. There is no travel light in the Roman Legion. Everything you own, you carry. Food rations, water flasks, spare sandals, even a piece of your tent, you carry it all. By the time you're fully dressed and loaded, you're already sweating. And then, without any real breakfast, the marching begins. At first, you tell yourself, I can do this. It's just walking, but it is not just walking. It is a fast, steady pace, 20 Roman miles. That's roughly 32 kilometers. You are not strolling. You are moving with purpose, information, step by step, in perfect rhythm. The ground is not smooth. Sometimes it is dusty, sometimes rocky. You trip on roots, stumble over stones. And the sandals you're wearing offer little comfort. They are stiff with hard leather soles, no cushion, no modern design. Every step sends a small shock up your legs. After the first mile, you already feel the weight of the armor pressing on your shoulders. Your back starts to ache. After 3 miles, your legs feel heavy. After 5, you're drenched in sweat. and the sun hasn't even risen yet around you. The other recruits are also struggling. You can hear the sound of heavy breathing. Some are already falling behind, but no one dares to stop, because if you stop, the centurion notices. And the punishment is always worse than the pain of keeping up, and you keep marching. Your body begins to complain in new ways. Your feet rub against the rough leather of your sandals, creating blisters. Your hands are sore from gripping your shield and spear. Your shoulders are red and raw from the straps of your pack. You try to distract yourself. Maybe you look at the horizon, hoping for some sign of rest, but the horizon never changes. It's just more road, more dust, more endless walking. You might think, well, at least I'm getting stronger. That's what modern trainers say, right? But this is not a gentle workout of a gym. This is not a fitness routine with breaks and water bottles. This is a forced march with no sympathy. If you fall, someone will simply step over you. After 10 miles, your legs begin to feel like they belong to someone else. They move stiffly, like they're no longer connected to your will. Your mouth is dry. The water you carry is rationed, and you are not allowed to drink freely. Every sip is carefully measured because you never know when you'll find the next. Water source stop, and here's the thing, you haven't even reached breakfast yet. This march happens before you've eaten anything. Your stomach is empty, gnawing at itself. You can smell nothing but sweat and dust dot as the sun finally rises. It doesn't bring comfort. It brings heat. The cool air vanishes, replaced by the weight of the Roman sun pressing on your back. Your armor traps the heat, making you feel like you're cooking inside it dot, and yet you still march dot by the 15th mile. Your mind begins to go numb. You stop thinking about time. You stop thinking about how far you have left. You are just a moving body now, one foot in front of the other. Your ears ring from exhaustion. When you finally reach the 20th mile, you feel a strange kind of relief. You think it's over, but it isn't, because the march was only the beginning. After 20 miles, you are expected to build the camp. You have to dig trenches, cut wood, and set up defenses. Why? Because the Roman legion never rested in an unprotected spot. They built a miniature fortress every single night. So even after marching all day, you still have hours of work left. And what happens if you can't keep up? Nothing comforting. The legion has no patience for weakness. If you are too slow, if you complain, if you collapse, you are punished. The centurion will make you carry even more. Or he will have you repeat the march tomorrow with extra weight dot. Think about that dot before breakfast. You've already done more physical work than most modern people do in a week. You've carried more weight than you ever have. You've walked farther than you thought you could. And you've done it on an empty stomach, in rough sandals, with no breaks, no encouragement, and no way out. And after all that, do you get a good meal? No, just a small portion of barley porridge and maybe some bread. Enough to keep you alive, but never enough to make you feel full. This is what the brutal morning drill looked like. And it happened every day, not once a week, not occasionally, every single day dot. So when you imagine yourself as a Roman soldier, ask yourself, could you wake up before dawn, carry 30 kilograms of gear, march 20 miles without food, and still have the strength to build a camp before nightfall? Be honest. You'd collapse before breakfast, and that's why the Roman legion wasn't full of heroes like you see in movies. It was full of men who had no choice but to adapt. They either became stronger than they thought possible, or they didn't survive long enough to matter dot. So as you sit there, maybe lying in a soft bed, listening to this calm voice, think about your morning routine. Think about how hard it feels just to get out of bed. Sometimes dot now, imagine doing it all in the dark, in the cold, with a weight on your back that could crush you. That was the morning drill. And you wouldn't last past the first mile dot, so you've somehow survived the morning drill. You woke up before the sun, carried the weight of your life on your back, marched 20 miles without a single decent break, and built a temporary camp like a human mule. By now, your body is screaming. Your stomach is empty, and you're thinking, at least there will be food. Surely, after all that, they'll give us something good. Oh, how wrong you're, because in the Roman legion, food is not about pleasure. It's about survival. There's no warm buffet waiting for you. There's no soft bread, no roasted meat, no wine poured in shiny cups like you see in movies. No, what you get is barley porridge. Yes, barley, not rice. Not oats, not anything comforting. Just barley boiled into a thick glue-like paste. It's bland, heavy, and sits in your stomach like a rock. Sometimes, if you're lucky, there's a pinch of salt. If you're even luckier, you might taste a drop of olive oil, but most of the time, it's just warm mush in the bread. Forget the soft, fluffy kind, you know. Roman bread was dense, hard, and often stale. It was baked days before, left in the sun, and carried through marshes until it turned into something closer to a brick than a loaf. You'd have to dip it in water just to make it cheoble. As you sit there with your wooden bowl of porridge. You can't help but think about your modern meals. You remember the smell of coffee in the morning, the taste of fresh fruit, maybe toast with butter. You remember a warm lunch with spices, sauces, and flavors that made you happy. And suddenly, those simple meals you take for granted at home would feel like the finest luxury in the world. Here, in the Legion, there's no taste, no variety, no joy, just fuel. The Roman soldier's diet was designed for efficiency. Barley was cheap, filling, and easy to carry. It gave you enough energy to keep marching and fighting, but it didn't bring comfort. You were not supposed to feel comfortable. You were supposed to feel tough. And if you thought that was the end of the disappointment, think again. Because water wasn't always clean. Often it was stored in leather flasks, mixed with the taste of old skin and sometimes even dirt. To make it safer, they'd mix it with vinegar. Yes, vinegar. They called it posca. It was sour, acidic, and sharp. Soldiers drank it because it killed some of the bacteria in the water. But it was far from refreshing. So imagine this. You've marched all day, your lips are dry, your throat feels like sandpaper, and finally, you take a sip of your drink, and it tastes like weak salad dressing. That's your relief. Me, don't even dream about it. It was rare and usually given only during special campaigns. If they caught or bought some cheap cuts, they would boil it in the same pot as everything else. Vegetables? Maybe a few dried beans if they were available. Fruits? Only if you happened to be near a farm. Most of the time it was barley, bread, and more barley. Now, you might think, well, at least they had enough to eat. That's something. But even the portions were controlled. You didn't get to eat until you were full. You ate what they gave you when they gave it. And if supplies were short, you went hungry. And don't forget, you had to prepare it yourself. There were no cooks making meals for you. After the march, after building the camp, you had to gather around a fire with your unit and boil your own porridge in a pot. If you were too slow, you might not even get the good bits. If you didn't know how to cook it properly, you'd be eating lumpy, half-burnt mush. By the second day, your cravings would start. You'd dream of soft bread. You'd imagine the sweetness of honey. You'd think about fresh vegetables, juicy meat, even simple soup. But those cravings would never be answered. Instead, you'd wake up to the same porridge again, day after day, and you wouldn't complain, because in the Legion, complaining was dangerous. Food was food. If you said it wasn't enough, they'd tell you to be grateful you weren't starving. And if you refused to eat, well, you wouldn't have the strength to march the next day, and that would end badly for you. This was the luxury of a Roman soldier's meal. And yet, here's the strange thing, you'd still eat it. You'd eat every spoonful, every crumb of stale bread. Because after hours of marching, even the blandest food feels like a blessing. Your body would be so desperate for energy that the porridge would taste almost tolerable. Almost. But it would never feel like enough. You'd finish your bowl and still feel hungry. You'd scrape the edges of the pot, hoping for more. And the centurion would already be calling you back to duty. No time to rest, no time to sit and savor. Just eat, stand, and prepare for the next drill. Sometimes you'd see local villagers while passing through their lands. You'd smell their cooking fresh bread, roasted vegetables, maybe even meat. That smell would make your stomach ache with longing, but you couldn't have it. It wasn't for you. The funny thing is, the Legion was proud of this simple diet. They believed it kept soldiers disciplined. Rich food, they said, made men soft. Simple food made them hard. It was part of their strength. But for you, coming from a world of supermarkets and restaurants, it would feel like punishment. So imagine the scene. You're sitting by a small fire, holding a wooden bowl filled with steaming porridge. You look down at it, and it looks back at you, plain dull, without color or taste. You take a bite. It's warm but empty. You swallow it, and it sits heavy in your stomach. You take another bite because you have to, not because you want to. And as you chew, you remember how easy it was back home. You remember how you could open a fridge, or order food with a few clicks, or simply walk to a cafe. You remember the soft bread, the fresh fruits, the little treats you didn't even think twice about. Now, none of that exists. Just you, the Legion, and another bowl of barley. This is what the Romans called nourishment. No pleasure, no comfort. Just enough to keep you alive for another march. And tomorrow, it will be the same. The same porridge, the same bread, the same sour drink. So, could you do it? Could you wake up every day knowing that after all the pain and exhaustion, your reward would be a bowl of tasteless mush and a sip of vinegar water? Could you eat the same thing for weeks without losing your mind? Be honest, you'd miss your modern meals after the first bite, and that's the truth. You wouldn't just miss them. You'd dream about them. You'd crave them so badly that even the memory of a simple sandwich would feel like paradise. But in the Legion, there's no paradise, just barley. Always barley. By now, you've dragged yourself through the brutal morning drill. You've marched farther than your legs wanted to go, carried more weight than your back could bear, and eaten food that barely deserved to be called food. Maybe you're thinking the hardest part is behind you, but you're wrong, because now you get to meet the centurion. Yes, the centurion, the man who controls your fate, the one whose voice cuts sharper than any sword, the one who decides if you survive the Legion or if you crumble and disappear into nothing. Forget the image of a friendly coach who gives you encouraging pep talks. There are no self-smiles here. The centurion is not here to motivate you gently. He is here to break you and then rebuild you in the Legion's image. And he does it with discipline so harsh that it makes your worst teacher, boss, or trainer look like a saint. You first see him from a distance. He stands still, perfectly upright, wearing his helmet with the iconic crest that sets him apart from the ordinary soldiers. His armor shines not because it's decorated for beauty, but because it's polished from years of use. He doesn't need to move to make you feel his presence. You just know he's watching everything. And then he speaks. His voice is not loud in a chaotic way. It's sharp like a whip. Every word lands heavy. Even if you don't understand Latin, you understand the meaning. It's simple. Obey or regret it. The centurion doesn't smile. He doesn't laugh. He doesn't care if you're tired, hungry, or in pain. Your excuses mean nothing to him. In his eyes, you are just another recruit who needs to be shaped or discarded You think maybe he'll give a speech about honor, duty, or glory. No, there are no comforting words about pride or teamwork. Instead, he begins with orders, immediate, clear, and impossible to ignore. Form up. And just like that, you and the others scramble into formation. If you're slow, he notices. If you're crooked, he notices. If your shield isn't held at the exact right angle, he notices. He sees everything and what happens when he notices. Punishment. In the Roman legion, discipline wasn't a suggestion. It was absolute. If you failed to follow orders, you weren't given a quiet lecture. You were flogged publicly in front of everyone. Not just to hurt you, but to show the others what happens when someone disobeyes. Imagine that for a moment. You're already exhausted. Your body is already screaming. And now you're standing in a line with your fellow recruits, watching one of them being whipped for making a mistake. You hear the crack of leather on flesh. You see the pain in his eyes. You feel the fear crawl up your spine because, if you slip even once, that could be you. And the centurion doesn't flinch. He doesn't hesitate. Because for him, this isn't cruelty. It's order. He believes fear is the strongest teacher. You might think, surely they didn't do this all the time. But yes, they did. Roman discipline was legendary for being strict. Late for duty, punishment. Drop your weapon, punishment. Show weakness, punishment. There was even something worse called decimation. If an entire unit failed or disgraced itself, the centurion would make the soldiers draw lots. 1 out of every 10 men would be beaten to death by their own comrades while the centurion watched. Yes, by their own comrades. That's how serious they were about obedience. But even on normal days, the centurion was enough to keep everyone in line. You see, he wasn't just some random soldier put in charge. Centurions were veterans. Men who had survived countless battles, endless marches, and years of the same pain you're only starting to taste. They were tough, cunning, and completely loyal to the legion. They didn't earn their position with kind words or charm. They earned it by being unbreakable dots, so when the centurion looks at you, it's like he's looking through you. He can see if you're weak. He can see if you're lying. He can tell if you're about to break before you even know it yourself. And what's worse, he enjoys finding the cracks. When you're too tired to hold your shield properly, he notices. He'll make you hold it longer. When you're trembling from exhaustion, he'll add more weight. If you dare complain, he'll double your drill. And if you still can't handle it, he'll humiliate you in front of everyone, because in his mind, there are only 2 types of men, those who can endure and those who can't. And the legion has no use for the second type. So you stand there, heart pounding as the centurion walks down the line, inspecting every soldier. His eyes are like daggers. He stops in front of you. He studies you quietly. He doesn't say anything for a moment, and the silence feels heavier than any words. Then he nods slightly, or maybe he frowns. Either way, you know your day is about to get harder. He orders another drill. Maybe it's holding your shield above your head for an hour. Maybe it's running laps around the camp with full armor. Maybe it's practicing combat moves until your arms feel like they're falling off. Whatever it is, it will hurt Dot, and when you think it's finally over, he'll order it again. Because the centurion's job is simple. Break you. Remove your softness. Strip away everything human that doesn't serve the legion. Modern people think discipline is a teacher telling you to pay attention or a boss asking you to be on time. But Roman discipline? It was physical, immediate, painful. There was no talking it out. There was only obedience or suffering, and yet, strangely, it worked. The centurion created soldiers who could march for days, fight for hours, and hold the line when everyone else would run. They didn't love him, they feared him. And that fear made them stronger. So as you watch him, this figure of control and power, you realize something. You don't just fear his whip. You fear what he represents, the Legion itself. A machine that doesn't care about you as an individual. A machine that demands you give everything, or it will grind you down and replace you. And in that moment, you understand why the Centurion is your worst nightmare, because he will never praise you. He will never comfort you. He will never let you rest. He will just keep pushing you until you either become unbreakable or disappear. So the question is, could you survive under his watchful eyes? Could you handle a leader who doesn't care about your feelings, only your obedience? Could you live every day knowing that one mistake might mean public punishment? Be honest, you wouldn't. The Centurion would take one look at you, the soft, modern you, and know you wouldn't last. And the Legion? It wouldn't even remember. Your name. By now, you have met the Centurion. You've learned that his voice is sharper than a blade, and his eyes see every weakness you try to hide. You've also learned that the Legion has no patience for soft hearts, tired legs, or excuses. And now the real fun begins, because the Roman Legion's favorite activity, marching, always marching. You might think marching is just walking, right? Simple, easy, no big deal. But oh no, it's not that. Marching in the Legion is an endless test of endurance. It's walking in full armor, carrying your weapons, shield, and all your belongings for hours and hours, day after day, over dirt roads, rocky paths, hills, and valleys. Sometimes even through mud and water. Your feet, already sore from yesterday, are trapped in stiff sandals. They rub against your skin. With every step, at first you just feel a little discomfort, but after a few miles, the skin begins to peel. You get blisters, big, raw, burning blisters. And once a blister bursts, it's even worse. Every step becomes a small sting of pain. And do you get to rest? Of course not. You keep marching. Your shoulders ache from the weight of the armor. Your back feels like it's carrying a stone wall. Your arms are tired from holding your shield in the correct position. You think just a little rest would help, but rest doesn't come. Then, when you finally stop marching, do you get to relax? No, you drill. Yes. After hours of walking, the Centurion will order combat practice. You'll swing a wooden sword heavier than the real thing. Over and over again. You'll practice thrusting, blocking, forming lines. You'll do it until your arms shake uncontrollably. And when you think you're done, he'll tell you to do it again. The Romans believed repetition made perfection. So you repeat everything until you stop thinking and just move. It doesn't take long for bruises to appear. On your arms, on your legs, on your shoulders. You hit the training posts. You hit each other during sparring. The wooden swords are heavy and clumsy, and sometimes you miss. Sometimes you get hit, and it leaves a mark. And this is all without an actual battle. Now, imagine the mornings after. You wake up and your whole body feels stiff. Your feet are swollen. Your legs feel like they're carved from stone. Your back is a solid knot of pain. Even breathing hurts. And yet the day starts the same way before the sun rises. With more marching and more drills. This is where your pride starts to crumble. You came to the Legion thinking you were strong. You thought, I can handle this. I'm tough. Maybe you even imagine yourself earning glory, being admired, becoming a hero. But the Legion doesn't care about your fantasies. It strips you down layer by layer until all that's left is your willpower. You start to see it in the faces of the other recruits, the confident ones, the loud ones who boasted on the first day. They're quiet now. Their eyes look hollow. Their voices are soft. Even the strongest men, the ones with muscles like stone, begin to falter because strength alone isn't enough. The Legion doesn't just test your body. It tests your mind, and many can't take it. Some recruits quit. They simply stop moving during a march. They collapse on the road, gasping for air, unable to take another step. Others fake injuries, hoping to be sent home. A few even try to run away in the night. But here's the thing, desertion in the Legion is not freedom, it's death. If they catch you trying to escape, you're punished publicly. Sometimes you're beaten, sometimes worse, so most don't even try. They just break slowly, like glass under constant pressure. And it's not just the physical pain, it's the monotony. The endless routine, march, drill, build the camp. Eat bland food, sleep, wake up and do it again. Every day feels the same. There's no weekend, no holiday, no day off. You start losing track of time. Was this the 5th day of marching or the 10th? Does it matter? The Legion doesn't care how many days you've endured. It only cares that you keep going. And let's talk about the small injuries. The blisters on your feet become open wounds. Dirt gets inside and infection spreads. The bruises on your arms turn purple, then yellow, but they never really heal because you keep training on top of them. Your hands get callous from gripping your weapons, but the skin cracks anyway. Sometimes during sparring, someone hits you too hard and you feel a rib ache every time you breathe. But you can't stop because stopping means weakness. And weakness means punishment, so you push on. And yet, even with all this pain, you still have to keep formation. That means matching the exact steps of the man next to you. If one person is out of sync, the entire unit looks sloppy. And the centurion hates sloppy. So if one recruit messes up, the entire unit gets punished. Which means everyone learns to hate the weak ones. It creates a strange kind of pressure. You're not just suffering for yourself, you're suffering for the group. If you fail, everyone suffers with you. That makes the drills even heavier on your mind. And here's the quiet truth. This is why even the strongest recruits quit. It's not because they're not strong enough. It's because they realize strength doesn't matter if you have no relief, no end in sight, no hope of comfort. It's the endlessness that breaks you, knowing tomorrow will be the same, knowing the blisters won't heal, knowing the bruises will only multiply, knowing the centurion will still be there, watching, demanding more. Even the bravest men eventually look down at their cracked hands and think, is this really worth it? And for many, the answer is no. You see, the Legion didn't want just anyone. It wanted the few who could take all of this blisters, bruises, boredom, pain, and keep going anyway. The ones who could watch their pride be stripped away and still march forward. So when you imagine yourself as a Roman soldier, remember this. It wasn't just about swinging swords and winning battles. It was about surviving the daily grind that crushed most men before they ever saw an enemy, and you'd probably last a few days. Maybe a week if you're stubborn, but eventually, the pain would stack up, your blisters would pop, your muscles would lock, your spirit would dim. And one morning, when the horn sounded before dawn, you just lie there, staring at the dark and think, I can't. And the Legion would move on without you, because in the Roman world, there was no room for broken pride. Only broken men left behind after the endless marching, the brutal drills, and the tasteless food. You'd think at least the night would bring some relief. Surely, after such a punishing day, the Legion would allow you a little comfort. Because in the Roman Legion, even sleep is not really rest. It is just another part of survival. When the day's marching finally ends, you don't just drop your pack and lie down. Oh no. First, you build the camp. Every evening, no matter where you are on a rocky hill, in a muddy field, or deep in a forest, you and your fellow soldiers must build a miniature fortress. Trenches are dug, stakes are hammered into the ground. Defensive walls are raised. Guards are posted. It takes hours. And you do it all after you've already marched 20 miles with heavy armor. By the time the camp is ready, your arms feel like they're falling off. Your legs are trembling. You are so tired that you can barely stand. Only. Then, when the camp is complete, are you allowed to think about sleep? But don't imagine a cozy tent with soft blankets. Roman soldiers slept on the ground, sometimes on bare dirt, sometimes on cold stone, sometimes in wet grass. If you were lucky, you had your cloak to wrap around yourself. If you were unlucky, you just lay there in your armor, stiff and sore, staring at the dark sky dot, and yes, the stars are beautiful. You might think sleeping under the stars sounds romantic, but not when your back is pressed against hard earth. Not when the night air is freezing cold. Not when insects crawl over your face and into your clothes. Sometimes it rains. The dirt turns to mud, and guess what? You still sleep there. You can feel the dampness creeping into your bones. Your cloak gets wet. Your sandals stay wet. You shiver all night. And if you think you'll at least get a full night's rest, think again, because the fear never goes away. Every soldier knows that at any moment an enemy could attack. Maybe it's bandits. Maybe it's local tribes who don't want you in their land. Maybe it's another army waiting for the perfect moment. So even when you close your eyes, you can't relax completely. Your mind stays alert, listening for strange sounds. The wind blows through the trees. A branch snaps. Someone whispers. And your heart jumps. Is it just another soldier moving in the dark? Or is it someone creeping toward the camp? You never know, Dotso. The Legion posts guards. Every few hours, soldiers take turns keeping watch. And when it's your turn, you don't sleep. You stand or sit in silence, staring into the shadows, holding your weapon, waiting for something that may or may not come. When you're not on guard duty, you lie there half asleep. Your body is so tired it aches, but your mind keeps drifting awake. You hear coughing, snoring, the shuffle of feet. You hear the creak of leather armor. You hear the distant howls of animals, and somewhere deep inside, you dream of home. You remember the bed you used to have. Maybe it wasn't fancy, but it was soft. You remember a blanket that actually kept you warm. You remember the quiet of your room, where the only sounds were the ones you wanted to hear. You remember feeling safe, but in the Legion, there is no safety. Sometimes the centurion wakes the camp in the middle of the night just to test you, just to see if you can grab your weapons and form a line in seconds. You leap up, heart pounding, confused, and half asleep, rushing to your position. Maybe it's a real attack. Maybe it's just a drill. Either way, there's no going back to. Sleep easily after that dot, and the ground doesn't forgive your body. Sleeping on dirt makes your back stiff. Sleeping on cold stone makes your joints ache. Sleeping in mud leaves you dirty and miserable. There is no relief, only more discomfort. You also have to share your sleeping space with your unit. That means no privacy. You lie shoulder to shoulder with other men, all of you sweating, tired and unwashed. The smell is, let's just say, unforgettable and hygiene. Forget it. You don't get to wash properly every night. Sometimes you don't even have water for drinking, let alone cleaning. So you sleep in the same sweat-soaked tunic. You marched in all day. Little pests become your nightly companions too. Lice, fleas, mosquitoes. They bite you as you sleep. You scratch in the dark, but it never helps. And yet, despite all this, you have no choice but to sleep. Because tomorrow will be the same. Another 20 miles. Another day of drills. Another night on the ground, so you try to find some comfort in the smallest things. Maybe you fold your cloak into a thin pillow. Maybe you find a patch of grass instead of rocks. Maybe you close your eyes and pretend the stars are watching over you like tiny guardians. But deep down, you know the truth. You're a vulnerable if an enemy attacks, you'll have seconds to react. If they slip past the guards, you might not even wake up in time. And if you die in your sleep, the Legion will move on without you. This constant tension gnaws at you. It doesn't let your mind rest. Even when you finally fall asleep, your dreams are strange. You dream of home, but it feels far away. You dream of warm beds, soft blankets, and the faces of people you once knew. But you wake up to the cold reality of the Legion. And the worst part, you don't know how long this will last. Days, weeks, months. There's no end date. You just keep going. Modern people think sleeping outside is fun. They call it camping. They bring tents, sleeping bags, soft mats. They light fires for warmth and tell stories for entertainment. It feels like an adventure, but for a Roman soldier, it wasn't an adventure. It was just life, and it wasn't glamorous. So imagine this. You're lying on the ground, your body aching from the day. The stars above look beautiful, but you can't enjoy them. The air is cold, the ground is hard, and the sound of a distant owl makes you jump. You pull your cloak tighter around you, but it doesn't help. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but you're not really asleep. You're waiting for the horn to sound again. Waiting for the centurion to shout orders. Waiting for the next march, the next drill, the next miserable day. And in that quiet, uncomfortable moment, you realize something. You miss home. Not the idea of home, the reality of it. The simple comfort of a bed. The peace of knowing you're safe. The warmth of walls around you. The silence of a night without fear. But in the Legion, there is no home. Only the dirt beneath you, the stars above, and the constant knowledge that tomorrow will be just as hard as today. So, could you sleep like this for weeks? Could you close your eyes every night, knowing you might wake to chaos or not at all? Could you accept the dirt, the fear, the aching loneliness? Be honest, you dream of home, and you'd never sleep well again. So you've survived the endless marching. You've endured the drills, the bland food, the hard ground, and the sleepless nights. By now, you might be thinking, well, at least the real action is coming. The glorious part, the battle. The thing Roman soldiers were famous for. You imagine yourself charging into the fight like a hero in a movie. You see yourself holding a sword high, cutting through enemies with ease, winning honor, and maybe even applause. But here's the first truth you probably don't want to hear. Real battles in the Roman Legion didn't happen every day. Days were just more marching, more building camps, and more waiting. Sometimes weeks, sometimes months passed with no real combat. The soldiers spent more time carrying supplies and patrolling roads than actually fighting. But when a battle finally came, it was nothing like the stories. It was not neat. It was not clean. It was not glorious. It was chaos. When the order came, you would form up with your unit. You'd feel the weight of your armor pressing on you, the rough leather straps rubbing your shoulders raw. Your shield would already feel heavy before you even moved. You'd hear the centurion's voice shouting commands. You'd hear the horns signaling the advance. And as the line began to move, you'd feel your heart pounding in your chest. Closer you got to the enemy, the louder it became. Screams, war cries, the clang of weapons. And then you'd see them. Real people, just like you, running toward you with swords, spears, and hatred in their eyes. And in that moment, all the drills suddenly felt different because now it wasn't just practice. It wasn't a wooden sword or a training post. Now, every move mattered. If you made a mistake, you wouldn't just get scolded. You'd die. The first clash would hit you like a wave. Shields slammed together. Swords scraped against metal. You'd feel the impact through your entire body. You'd be pushed, pulled, shoved in every direction. The neat lines you practiced, they'd start to blur as the chaos grew. You'd try to focus on your training. Keep the shield up. Keep your formation. Stab. Don't swing. Move forward. Stay alive. But it's not as simple as it sounds because the enemy is not just standing still, waiting for you. They're trying to kill you, and you can see it in their faces. The fear, the anger, the desperation. And you realize you look exactly the same. Your arms would start to burn after just a few minutes. Holding a heavy shield in one hand and a sword in the other while dodging blows is exhausting. Your breathing would become ragged. Sweat would pour into your eyes. You'd feel your grip slipping, and then there's the noise, the sound of metal hitting metal, the cries of the wounded, the screams of men falling beside you, the sickening thud when a blade finds flesh. It's not like in movies with dramatic music. It's just raw, ugly sound and the smell, blood, sweat, dirt. It all mixes into something you'll never forget. Sometimes you'd step forward and feel your sword hit something soft. You wouldn't even look. You wouldn't want to see the face of the person you just hurt. You'd just pull your sword back and keep moving, because if you stopped even for a second, someone would hit you from the side and you wouldn't have the luxury of fighting one person at a time. Enemies would come from every angle. You'd barely block one spear when another sword swung toward you. You'd push one opponent back, only to find another stepping into his place. It felt endless, and there was no time to think, no time to plan. You just reacted. Muscle memory and fear kept you moving. Even the strongest soldiers started to slow down after a while, because fighting with swords and shields all day is nothing like sparring and training. In training, you take turns. In training, you can stop. To catch your breath in a real battle, there's no stopping. No breaks. You keep moving until it's over or until you fall. Your arms would grow numb. Your shoulders would feel like they're tearing apart. Your legs would ache from the constant pushing and bracing and the heat. Imagine standing shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of men, all wearing metal armor, all sweating, all breathing hard. The air becomes thick and hot. It feels hard to breathe, and yet you keep going. Sometimes you wouldn't even see who you were hitting. You'd just thrust your sword forward into a wall of shields, hoping it hit something. Sometimes you wouldn't even know if the man next to you was alive or dead until he fell. And here's the part you really don't want to hear. Most battles didn't end in one quick clash. They dragged on for hours, not hours of pushing, hours of stabbing, hours of fear. When the enemy finally broke and ran, you'd think it was over. But no, you'd have to chase them, finish the fight, secure the field. And then after all that, you'd still have to set up camp before you could rest. And even if you survived, the battle would stay with you. You'd see the faces of the men you fought. You'd remember the sounds of the ones who didn't make it. You'd feel the weight of what you'd done, and what would you get in return? No special reward, no feast. Just another day in the Legion, another march, another night on the ground, another reminder that you were just a small piece of a huge machine dot. So, you thought there was a battle? Yes, there was. But it wasn't a single heroic moment. It was long, exhausting, and terrifying. And even if you won, you didn't feel like a hero. You just felt empty. The truth is, most Roman soldiers didn't die in battle. They died later of wounds, infections, disease, or simply exhaustion. But even the ones who lived carried the battle with them forever. So could you do it? Could you hold a shield for hours while someone tried to break through it? Could you fight in a wall of sweating, screaming men without running? Could you swing a sword over and over until your arms felt like they'd fall off, knowing that stopping meant death? Be honest. You'd think you wanted the glory, but the reality? It would crush your soul long before the enemy did, and the Legion would keep marching. With or without you by now, you've marched through endless miles, eaten barley mush until you lost the will to care, and survived sleepless nights on cold dirt. Maybe you're thinking the worst is over. Surely the real danger is only in the battles, right? Oh no, because in the Roman legion, your deadliest enemies weren't swords or spears, they were far smaller. So small you couldn't even see them coming. Welcome to the charming world of Roman hygiene. You see, being a soldier meant living close to hundreds of other men every single day. You slept side by side, shoulder to shoulder, in crowded camps. You sweated together during marches, shared the same food pots, drank from the same water supply. And of course, you didn't have the luxury of hot showers, clean clothes, or disinfectants. What did that mean? It meant lice dot, yes. Lice, those tiny creatures that crawl into your hair, bite your scalp, and make you itch until you can't think. Straight, every soldier had them. It was almost like a badge of honor. No one escaped. At night, while you tried to sleep, you'd feel the soft tickle of little legs crawling through your hair and beard. And when you scratched, you'd find tiny eggs and worse, tiny moving things. And that wasn't all. Fleas joined the party too. They hid in your tunic and your cloak, in the folds of your blanket. They bit your legs, your arms, anywhere they could reach. Mosquitoes loved you as well. So you spent every night scratching instead of resting. But let's not stop there, because even worse than lice were the infections. Remember those blisters on your feet from all the marching? They didn't heal. They stayed open. Dirt got inside. Your sandals rubbed the skin raw. And with no clean water, those wounds would fester. Slowly, painfully, they'd turn red, swollen, and hot. And without modern medicine, a simple blister could become a death sentence. And what about your teeth? Dental care didn't exist. You might chip a tooth while biting into the hard Roman bread. It would hurt. It would get infected. An infection spread fast in those conditions. Something as small as a toothache could lead to fever. Fever could lead to weakness. And weakness in a legion? That was dangerous. Then there were the lovely stomach problems. Remember, your food wasn't always fresh. It was stored in leather bags, carried for days in the sun, or bought cheaply from locals. Sometimes it was spoiled. And the water? Let's just say it wasn't crystal clear. Even mixing it with vinegar didn't make it perfectly safe. So soldiers often suffered from diarrhea, cramps, or worse, and there was no staying in bed to recover. You still had to march. You still had to carry your gear. You still had to train. Imagine doing all that with a fever or stomach pain, but the real horror came in the form of disease, because wherever the Roman legion went, disease followed: typhoid, dysentery, malaria in some regions, and later, plagues that wiped out entire units without a single enemy attack. When hundreds of men lived in tight camps with poor sanitation, it was the perfect breeding ground for sickness. One soldier would cough, then another, then an entire tent. And suddenly, half the camp was too weak to stand. The legion tried to keep clean in their own way. They built latrines in the camps. They made sure water channels were dug. They even bathed in rivers or public baths when they had the chance. But it wasn't enough. Not by modern standards. Baths, when they existed, weren't sterile. Everyone shared the same water. So you washed yourself in the same pool of dirt and sweat as hundreds of others. Clothes weren't washed daily either. You wore the same tunic for days, sometimes weeks. It would become stiff with sweat, dirt, and whatever else collected during marches. And when it rained, your clothes stayed damp. Damp clothes meant rashes. Rashes meant infections. And let's not forget the delightful smells. The smell of unwashed men packed together in tents. The smell of wet wool, sweat, and leather. The smell of latrines nearby. Add in a few dead animals on the road and a battlefield that hadn't been cleared yet, and you had an aroma you'd never forget. Even drinking water was risky. Springs and rivers weren't always clean. Sometimes animals drank from the same spot. Sometimes enemy armies poisoned wells. And yet, You had no choice but to drink, because dehydration would kill you even faster. So little by little, the real enemy crept in silently. Not with swords, not with war cries, but with fevers, with swelling wounds, with rashes and coughing fits. And here's the cruel part: you couldn't just take a day off to heal. The Legion couldn't afford weak soldiers. If you were sick but still able to stand, you marched. If you had a fever but could still hold a shield, you trained. If you had an infected wound, you wrapped it in a dirty cloth and hoped it didn't get worse. And if it did, you were left behind. Yes, left behind. If you became too weak to move, the Legion would simply move on without you. They couldn't risk slowing down an entire army for one man. So you'd be left on the roadside or in a village, hoping you'd somehow survive. Sometimes there were makeshift doctors, medics who used herbs, vinegar, or simple bandages. But their knowledge was limited. They couldn't stop infections the way modern medicine does. And they certainly couldn't cure plagues. So disease killed more soldiers than battles ever did. And yet, this was just life in the Legion. Everyone accepted it. It was normal to have lice, normal to have infected blisters, normal to see men coughing up blood after a long march. But you'd go crazy after the first few days. You'd feel the itch of lice on your scalp and want to shave your head. You'd look at your dirty tunic and long for a washing machine. You'd taste the sour water and miss clean, cold drinks. You'd see a blister turn ugly and panic because you know what happens next, and you'd realize something important. The Legion didn't just fight human enemies. It fought nature. It fought the silent killers that came from living rough, with no real hygiene, no real rest, and no escape. So could you handle it? Could you live in the constant itch of lice, the sting of infection, the smell of sickness all around you? Could you keep marching next to coughing men, knowing the fever might reach you next? Could you fight a war against enemies you couldn't even see? Be honest, you'd quit. Or you'd get sick before you even had the chance, because in the Roman Legion, death didn't always come with a sword. Sometimes it came quietly, in the bite of a flea or the sip of bad water. And no one would remember you. So here we are. You've marched through the endless miles. You've eaten the tasteless barley mush. You've slept on cold, wet ground. You've scratched at lice until you almost went mad. You've faced the centurions, glare at the brutal drills, and maybe even the chaos of battle. And you've learned the truth. The Roman Legion was not the shining glory you imagined. It was hard. It was unforgiving. And it didn't care about you. Now, imagine yourself, yes, you, the modern soft human. You wake up in a world where your bed is warm, your clothes are clean, and your meals are flavored with spices you never even think about. You have running water, medicine, and shoes designed to protect your feet. You have quiet nights, safe homes, and time to rest. Drop that version of you into the Roman Legion, and how long would you last? Let's be honest, you wouldn't even make it through the morning. You'd wake before dawn, confused and shivering on the ground, wondering why you agreed to this. The cold would bite into your skin. Your muscles would already ache from the rough sleeping surface. And then the horn would sound, the centurion would shout. You'd scramble into your stiff, heavy armor. The straps would dig into your shoulders. The shield would feel awkward in your hand. Then, before you even got your bearings, you'd be ordered to march. Not a gentle walk, but a full 20 miles in sandals. With 30 kilograms of gear strapped to your body, within the first mile, your back would ache. By the third, your feet would blister. By the fifth, you'd be sweating so much your tunic would stick to your skin like wet paper. And by the 10th, you'd be wondering how anyone could do this for years. And when you finally stopped, no breakfast. Just drills. You'd hold a heavy wooden sword and try to swing it over and over, your arms trembling like weak branches. You'd watch the centurion's eyes scanning for mistakes, and you'd feel the quiet fear of punishment for even the smallest slip. And after the drills, you'd build the camp. You'd dig trenches, hammer stakes, lift wood. You'd do hard labor on top of the marching and training dot by noon. You'd be finished, not with the work, but with yourself. Your body would scream, enough that your mind would whisper, I can't. You'd look at the other soldiers, some grim, some hollow-eyed, all tougher than you, and you'd realize something painful. They were built for this life. You are not. You've grown up in a world where comfort is normal, where rest is easy, where food is plentiful. They didn't. Their lives, even before the Legion, were already harder than anything you've known. So when they joined, they were already half prepared. But you're soft. Not weak in a bad way, just soft in the way modern life makes people. Your body hasn't been shaped by constant hardship. Your mind hasn't been forced to survive without breaks. So yes, by noon, you'd quit, not because you're lazy, not because you're weak, but because you've lived in a time where you never had to endure something like this, and that's the secret history doesn't tell you. We romanticize the past. We see movies with shining soldiers marching in perfect lines, fearless and noble. We read stories about Roman glory, about brave men who built an empire. We think, wow, they were heroes. I could have been one too, but the reality was ugly. It was mud, blood, hunger, disease, and fear. It was endless marching and endless waiting. It was pain you couldn't escape and discomfort you couldn't fix. And the so-called glory, it rarely came. Most soldiers didn't return home rich or famous. Most didn't have songs sung about them. Most didn't even survive long enough to dream. They just got older, sicker, and forgotten. So when you hear about the Roman Legion, remember this. It wasn't a story of constant victory. It was a story of endurance. The Legion wasn't great because it was easy. It was great because it took ordinary men and pushed them past what most people could handle. Could you do it? Could you give up everything you know, your comfort, your safety, your soft life, and become a part of a machine that would use you until there was nothing left? You probably couldn't, and that's okay, because you don't live in their world. You live in a world where you can listen to this calmly lying in your warm bed. You can close your eyes and drift into sleep without worrying about surprise attacks. You can eat in the morning without marching 20 miles first. You can shower away the day's dirt, and you can rest without fear. The Legionnaires didn't have that. So tonight, as you close your eyes, think of them for a moment. Think of the blisters on their feet, the aching in their backs, the lice in their hair. Think of them holding their shields under the hot sun, swinging heavy swords until their arms felt numb. Think of them sleeping on cold dirt, staring at the same stars you see, but feeling no peace. They endured so much for so little, and yet somehow they kept going. Maybe that's why their stories still echo today. Not because they were glorious, but because they survived what most of us never could. But you'd quit by noon. You'd drop your gear, sit in the dirt, and say, enough, and done. And the Legion would just march on without you, because that's what it always did. Hides the misery behind romantic words like honor and bravery. But when you look closer, you see the truth behind every empire are countless tired, forgotten men who gave everything and got nothing back. So sleep now. Be glad you're not one of them, because you wouldn't last a day.